Hello and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on buying and selling animals and the animal movement report. If you do have any questions during the webinar, you can type them in and we can address those at the end of the session. So first of all, what we're going to look at are movement codes, which are the reasons for any movements. To look at these, if you go to the cow's head, and then daily tasks. Here you've got the movement codes, and this is where you can manage your list of movement reasons. So these are all the reasons for purchasing. You've got the sales here, and then the died codes. What you can do in these tabs here is you can add a new reason from here. So if we put in a new reason of moved off, for example, and then just press OK, that will save that new reason there. And then when you go to sell any animals, that reason will appear. If you've got any that you don't want to use anymore, you can just double click on that option and then just select not in use and then press OK. And that option, when you go to sell any animals, because we're in the sales tab, that won't appear now. So your list will be cut down to what is relevant for your farm. After we've managed our movement codes, what we can do is also manage the supplier list. So that's in your cow's head, daily tasks, and supplier list. So in here, these are all the suppliers where you would buy animals from. So we've got like auction centres in here. This will also be where you can manage who you buy medicines from, semen stock, your vets. All of those suppliers that appear in the list will be listed here. You may find you have more than one of the same supplier, and it may be because they've been added in, and you can double click on them and then merge them with the other one that is the same, just so you tidy up your supplier list a bit more and your list isn't as long. What you can also do is add a new supplier in here. So if we type in our new supplier's name, it's important that you copy that and paste that into the herd number field. If you don't paste that into herd number field, it won't appear in your program. What also is important to remember is the type column here. This determines what part of the program this supplier will become available to use. So, for example, if you've got them ticked as semen because you buy semen stock from this supplier, they won't appear if you're moving off cattle, and that's because that cattle box isn't ticked. Or if you're buying medicines, they won't appear there. So that may be why you have more than one of the same suppliers there, is because they didn't appear where you wanted them to appear, so they've been added in again. So it's important to tick the relevant boxes down the right hand side which relate to your supplier, and then they'll appear in the relevant places in your program. So we're just going to tick cattle and select OK. It gives you an overview of the ticks that you've got here. So our new webinar suppliers tick for semen and cattle, and our top two, lid and new, they're not ticked for cattle here. What you can also do if there's a supplier you don't use anymore is just double click on it, and again you've got the not in use option there, which again it will keep them in the background, but they won't appear in your list because they're no longer in use. So to sell animals, If we go to the cow's head, daily tasks, daily events, what you can do is go to the batch entry and then purchase sale. Sale is already default, and then you've got the action here to add a new sale. You can modify an existing or delete an existing sale, but for this purpose we're adding a new one. You can narrow down the animals that's displayed per group if you tick that tick box and select the relevant group. And you can also determine what list of animals are displayed by their animal type and by their status, so if they're calved or young stocks. So we're going to pull the dairy cows that are young stock. We're going to go to next, and in this screen here, if you're doing a batch sale, you can tick the relevant animals here just by clicking in the drop box, in the tick box, sorry. And then in the top field here, if you want to find an animal because your list is quite long, you can just type in their number and then just press the enter key to tick them, and you can just work your way through a list quite quickly and more accurately by typing them in at the top. It's saying here we've got 4 animals selected, and then we're going to go to next, and then you need to select the sale date. So we're going to say they sold yesterday, and then the reason, and this is the reasons that were in the movement codes that we were in a minute ago. So we've gone and selected the box with the 3 dots in it, and then we've got here our new reason for sale, and then press OK. Here you can type in the total income that you got for the animals if you record that. Same with the total weight. You can also type in your comment. And then supplier, this is where we were in our supplier list. And as you can see, lid and new was not selected as cattle in the supplier list, so they haven't appeared here, because if cattle is ticked against the suppliers, then they'll appear in this list here. If you are adding a supplier whilst you're selling, you can just go to the plus sign here, and then you do get the same screen appear. So we're going to select our webinar supplier and press OK, and then finish. And those 4 animals have now had the sales processed against them. So if you want to go and see all the animal movements report, you go back to your cow's head and then go to herd. In here you've got number 6, the animal movements. Click on that one, and what that will display is all your animal movements. You've got the start period here, the birth, purchase tab, the sale, death, transfer, and then the end. If you want to change the date range you're looking over, go into properties, and you can look over the last 6 months if you wish, just by selecting the start date and the end date. Or you can look at it by years if you are wanting to pull back a couple of years ago and you want to look at 2017, you would look at the year, or you can just put in the start and end dates there and then press OK. You can minimize these, so just press on the minus sign, and as you can see, it breaks it down into different categories, and in each category it gives you a list of all the animals. In the birth tab here, it just, again, it gives you all of the information of all the births. We've got it here, the heifers and the beef. Any purchases in that time frame are sales. So as you can see here, we've got our webinar supplier sales here. any deaths, transfers, and then we've got the end here. What you can also do is print preview this and print it out or save it onto your PC. You've got the save floppy disk option there. And you can also just get a summary, an overview of all of that information. Just as a quick look over, if you go into summary. So we've got the overview here, and then it breaks it down by purchased animals. And then on the next page, we've got the sold on there, and you can print that out and save that to your PC also. What you can do as well, if you're purchasing animals, if you go to the cow's head, daily tasks and daily events, go into batch entry and again back into purchase and sale. If you've taken an animal to market and they haven't sold, but you've moved them off, or if you're buying an animal that was already on your farm at one point, you can select this purchase option here. If you're adding a brand new animal that you're purchasing, or a batch of animals that you're purchasing, last week's webinar runs over enrolling animals. That webinar there, that's how you would put on your purchases for animals that have never been on your farm database before. But this one here, these are animals that have been on your farm at some point and they're not on there now, and now you're repurchasing. So you can add a new, and again, you can filter out the date range, select the animal type, and then go into next. Select the animal that's relevant to be repurchased, next again. And what will happen here is it will give you the animal's previous number, but that number may not be relevant to use now because it's against another animal. And then you can just type in the new number here and then press next. Again, you've got your purchase date. So if we do today's date, the reason, these reasons are different because it's the purchase reason. Your total cost if that's being recorded, any comments, and again you've got your supplier in there, and then press finish. And that animal will then be back on your herd. If there are any questions, please do feel free to type them in now and we can address them. There will be a short survey sent out at the end of this webinar just to get your feedback.